There is a special place in my heart for The Simpsons. When I was a kid, episodes would air every night at 6 p.m, so like many Australians my age, the Simpson family and the town of Springfield was as much a part of my life as my own family and my own hometown. As I grew up, I began to appreciate more and more just how sharp the writing is, from the incisive humour to the sadness and heartbreak that underlies so many of the characters. There is one episode, however, that reads very differently in 2020 than it did in 1994. The Season 6 episode Homer Badman, in which Homer is falsely accused of sexual harassment, is an extremely relevant episode in an era of alternative facts and fake news. But in the Me Too era, it presents a frightening world where a harasser's perspective is more important than the accuser's. Just in case you're one of those deeply tragic millennials who weren't allowed to watch The Simpsons at home, here's a recap. The episode begins with Homer and Marge visiting a candy convention, and local grad student Ashley Grant arriving to babysit the kids. At the candy convention, Homer steals a gummy rendering of the Venus de Milo, and later when he drives Ashley home, it gets stuck to her pants. As Ashley gets out of the car, Homer removes the candy, which is confusing and scary to Ashley, who only knows that Homer pinched her butt. The next day, the front lawn of the Simpson home becomes the site for a protest, as the awkward moment between Homer and Ashley is turned into a full-blown sex scandal. A local TV magazine news show picks up the story and edits Homer's interview into a leering confession. After that, more respectable news crews begin filming the Simpson home at all hours, and it seems like every talk show is using Homer as a punchline. Eventually, groundskeeper Willie comes forward and admits that he has footage of the incident, which proves Homer's innocence. Something the episode is alarmingly prescient about is the portrayal of news crews working within the 24-hour news cycle. In 1994, American cable news only had one 24-hour station, that was CNN, and it wouldn't be until 1996 that Fox launched its own 24-hour channel. In response to the scandal, all of Springfield's news stations camp outside the Simpson residence, determined to invade every inch of the Simpson family's privacy by filming from the ground and from helicopters and from a heat-sensitive camera, a bit that produced quite possibly the episode's, maybe the entire show's best gag.
Now, this technology is new to me, but I'm pretty sure that's Homer Simpson in the oven, rotating slowly.
The way news crews could be whipped into a frenzy of gossip and speculation is a pitch-perfect indictment of the blurring of boundaries between news and gossip, and the relaxing of journalistic standards that occurs when views and ad revenue are more important than accuracy in reporting. Or at least it would be, for any topic other than sexual harassment. Homer Badman imagines a world where accusations of sexual harassment carry more power than they do now, and certainly more power than they did in 1994. Remember, this episode first aired 3 years after Anita Hill was put through hell for accusing Clarence Thomas of sexual harassment. Despite Hill's accusations, Thomas was still put on the Supreme Court, making him one of the extremely small handful of people who has a guaranteed job until he dies. So don't you dare give me anything about sexual assault accusations ruining the life of the accused. Meanwhile, the world of the episode imagines that after being groped in a car, a graduate student can run back to her dorm, rally a group of protesters, organise, make signs, and camp out on the front lawn of her harasser all in maybe 8 nighttime hours. This is a world where these protesters can follow their exhausted target to work and have the unanimous support of every major news studio and talk shows along the way. At the height of his misery, Homer channel surfs and views small snippets of 3 talk shows where panellists are all unequivocally championing Homer's perceived guilt, despite increasingly tenuous connections to him.
I don't know Homer Simpson. I never met Homer Simpson or had any contact with him, but I'm sorry, I can't go on.
That's okay. Your tears say more than real evidence ever could.
Over here in the real world, however, panel shows are much less friendly to survivors of harassment and assault. For example, in 2009 on The View, Whoopi Goldberg defended convicted sex offender Roman Polanski, saying his rape of a 14-year-old was not rape. Maybe I'm not being fair with the Polanski comparison. After all, Polanski has wealth, status, clout, the ability to flee to France and live in a very comfortable exile. Those are all things that the working-class Homer definitely does not have. It's easier to imagine people defending Polanski than Homer, but it's also easy to imagine the scrutiny Homer faces being turned instead to Ashley for getting into a car with a stranger. In June of 2018, 22-year-old Melbourne comedian Eurydice Dixon was raped and murdered on her way home from a gig. And in response, Police Superintendent David Clayton recommended that women employ situational awareness to avoid being murdered. Dixon's murderer had even less status and wealth than the Simpson patriarch, and yet, even among the outpouring of support for Dixon, a lot of people found a way to blame her for her own death at the hands of a stranger. And look, even though a good chunk of you have already left a comment, I do have good things to say about the episode. One thing Homer Badman does very well, and something I'm extremely grateful for, is that even though we know it's a misunderstanding, we're always asked to consider Ashley's point of view. She's never depicted as spreading lies, she's not making it up for attention or to get back at Homer for something unrelated. We, the audience, are expected to believe that Ashley, in that moment, felt genuinely scared and violated. Just look at this shot. Look at him drooling with his arm disappearing through the bottom of the frame about where it would disappear from Ashley's vision. In this one shot, he does look like a predator. At least the popular vision of a predator is a greasy, alley-dwelling pervert. Bit like this one.
Now I'm gonna grab me something sweet.
From the start, we are expected to sympathize with Ashley's point of view as well as Homer's. Even Homer understands where Ashley's coming from. When we see the grab happen, we understand why Ashley might not have stuck around for long enough to ask why Homer had his hand on her butt, which would have resolved the central tension of the episode right away. Ashley's experience kicked off the plot's central problem, but the true villains are the cable news producers who turn the story into a scandal. They're not even interested in justice for Ashley, they're just in it for profit. Even with the episode's good points, Homer Badman is still a view of sexual harassment as harassers would like it to be portrayed. A single moment taken out of context, spun out of control until it's impeding every aspect of the life of the accused. It's the perspective of those who are worried their careers will be ruined by an accusation of harassment, and not the perspective of an order of magnitude more people whose lives are upended by the harassment they live through and their treatment when they report it. Still, I think what saves the episode is that it's not a response to Me Too, or like whatever the 90s version of Me Too was. Sexual harassment has been handled on the show before, like when Mr. Burns harasses Marge, but that plot was resolved when Mr. Burns realizes how much Homer loves her, so he throws them an apology concert with Tom Jones. Plus, Marge does leave her job at the plant, so like, that's not great. Besides, I don't think I want to see their take on Me Too, considering how well they've responded to real-life events in the past.
Some things will be dealt with at a later date.
If at all.
Hey, beside the point, but why does Lisa have a signed portrait of a guy her parents know on her bedside table? Like, is that what the kids are doing these days? Ultimately, I come down positively on the episode, even if it's just that I'm nostalgic for a time when I could consume all manner of questionable media uncritically. Hell, maybe this is a future we can even look forward to. Maybe one day sexual harassment will be taken so seriously that this kind of media frenzy could happen over a misunderstanding. And it really will be a misunderstanding. Maybe we'll live in a world where listening to an accused harasser is a radical act, instead of the world we actually live in, where every time a story about harassment or assault makes it to the national news, we have to hear what these dipshits have to say about it. Hey, thanks for watching my first video essay in which I come after my one true love, The Simpsons. If you want to like and subscribe, that'd be cool. And if you have some extra money that you'd like me to have instead, I have a tip jar set up at paypal.me/Izzie.Jellyfish. Who knows, maybe I'll set up a Patreon one day. I don't know.